Welcome in, guys. I'm going to start with our audio so you can hear what I wrote today and you can look at the spread of cards and how they all kind of look as they're related together. And then I will be back with our normal video portion where I'll be talking to you guys and taking you through the cards. So take it away, Liz. That's me. The continuity from Monday's message and today's message is astounding to me. It is a continuation of our exploration of the innermost temple, the innermost concealed. Last week we were reckoning with the mysteries of life and creation, fate and destiny. This week we surrender to the awesomeness of the unknowable in tearful humility, in wonder and awe. As we lay down our egoic fight of intellectual understanding, we release the burden that exhausts us into despair and are renewed and invigorated by the miraculous nature of Elohim. This is likened to a child comforted by boundaries, assured that they are not in charge, that the fate of their household does not rest on them. As we rest from our fears, our anger dissolves, and our bitterness is separated from the sweetness of a fresh perspective, cleansing the waters of our heart and soul, and it is good. We look back on our lives and see how our experiences have offered us pressure, heat, and darkness that have produced precious gems from raw materials. Under the Master's hands, what was once rough, dull, chaotic, and formless is now brought into lustrous, geometric perfection and beauty. Our lead is becoming gold. The ennui that we currently feel is what I imagine the endless felt as the light gathered and burst forth into the orgasm of creation. There comes a point that what is to become is unstoppable. We believe and know and affirm that we are fearfully created in the image of the Utmost High, and that we too are that which we are becoming. Fix your gaze upon the light, build your house upon the rock, and be love. What is up, you guys? We are here for our midweek alchemy message where we look at the spiritual lessons for the week and we're sort of unpacking the work. I think of the midweek messages as if we had a tutor in school and the tutor is helping us do our homework. So from the Wild Unknown Alchemy deck, we've got the Golden Rose, followed by the Oil of Vitriol, followed by Gold. Now, what do you notice that is repetitive in these images? There's like a golden pearl, right? And what is the pearl? In the Bible, when it says, don't cast your pearls before swine, pearls are symbols of wisdom that has been earned through the irritant, right? The pain of our life, the experience, the challenge, when we've had to persevere and overcome. It's not the kind of wisdom that you can just give freely to someone. You can't, I can give you guys deep wisdom secrets, but until you live your own life and do your own inner work, they won't be alive for you. And you may or may not understand what I'm saying. But if you have a heart that has a desire to understand and it's open and your mind is open and your consciousness is permeable and flexible and open and soft, then eventually that wisdom will take on its own life for you, and your grain of sand will eventually become pearls after your own process. But you've all met people who are hardened to understanding, and they're determined to see things in the most surface level intellectual way, and they can't tap into that soul level of understanding. There are even people that try really hard, and they're just so literal that they can't tap into the intrinsic realm. And the intrinsic realm, the language of that realm, the spiritual realm, is symbolic, and it's poetic, and it's archetypal, and it's not necessarily straightforward. So some people just can't get it. Some people just won't get it. They don't want to. It was like this guy, I was scrolling through Instagram today, and this guy was talking about like the Godhead and how like Christianity killed the divine feminine. And I was like, okay, I see where I get that. Sure, the organized Christianity has the people who hijacked the Christian message did oppress the divine feminine. However, he went on to kind of go on this tirade about, the Ten Commandments being about this egotistical God, and how Christianity, Jesus was a Nepo baby and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, this is a person who has no real understanding, and they don't want to, because even a lot of witches and pagans and atheists and agnostics understand that Jesus would have been considered a liberal, and he valued women, and they were part of his ministry, and he believed in educating women and putting women in positions of leadership. And there were even women who financed his ministry, much to the chagrin of their husbands. They rebelled against their husbands and did it behind their backs. And women left their parents to follow Jesus. And Jesus was like, if you have to leave your parents and choose me over them, then so be it, And so Jesus was all about liberating women. And so this kind of attitude is what I'm talking about. Like, you can't cast your pearls to that person. I started to comment. I was like, well, I've learned from recent times, I have no energy to get into comments with anyone right now. But I thought I'd be casting my pearls upon swine, because he's determined to believe what he wanted to believe. And I understand the feeling of anger that is the root behind that kind of perspective and attitude. And if you're not angry in the world right now, it's like you're almost not even paying attention. So I can't demonize him for that, but he just wasn't quite getting it exactly right. This is where I try to come in and be the bridge, because I think a lot of atheists left the church because they knew that something wasn't right, and they didn't understand how not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. They couldn't separate human beings' corruption of Jesus's message and teachings, and the way that human beings had stolen, like they'd ruined the brand, so to speak. And so, they couldn't even hear the truth of Christ consciousness and Christ teachings after that, because they were so caught up on the fact that people had ruined it. And so they couldn't separate the two. So I do see that in this, because the rose here is, the golden rose talks about how the outer petals are sort of open, and the rose sort of has this interesting mystery where it has a spiral in a clockwise direction and in a counterclockwise direction. And so the outer petals open up, and these are the outer mysteries that we can explore and learn deeper. They also correspond to the governances of the cosmos, like the energies of the planets and the elements, and the mysteries that we can sort of put our senses to and understand and learn deeper about. And then as you go further into the center of the rose, the petals become tighter and tighter and tighter. And so the mysteries become harder to access until you get to the inner petals where you're not even able to see them. They're so tight and they're obscured. And so those represent the innermost secrets, the unknowable, the innermost temple, right? And when in the days of the temple, there would be the outer temple, but then there would be different layers that you'd go in. That in the innermost temple, only the high priests who had been through rituals of purification, only they could enter the innermost temple. So too, when we understand biblical literature, we understand that there are layers of meaning, and you've got that surface level, the outer level, where you're getting a literal understanding of what's happening. But then the literal is also telling a deeper story that is telling you things that are true on a soul level. And then there's like a deeper mystery and a spiritual truth and law underneath that. And so the innermost temple, we are the temple. It's not just a building. So we, human beings, are a temple for the utmost high. And within our temple, we have our body, which is the outer building. And then we have our mind, and we have our soul and our spirit. And within that realm, like we have our mind, our heart, and our soul. And then the inner depths of our soul, we have like that seat of the soul. And that spirit, the light of our spirit, is deep within that. And the spirit that we have is incorruptible. It's unchanging. And no matter what we've been through, it's always the pure spark of light of God. And so the soul, though, has layers and personality and flaws and weaknesses and ups and downs. And so the soul takes on layers over lifetimes of veils that sort of obscure that inner light and that inner truth of our purest self within. But that purest self has all the mysteries of the universe within it, and all of the powers of the Christ. And it's my oven timer, it's preheated. And so we have the ability to be that super consciousness that does the miracles that Jesus does. We could tap into those miracles if we could tap into that through the layers of buildup and grime and fear and doubt and preconceptions and limiting beliefs. If we can crack through these layers, eventually we let that light out and it becomes more and more radiant. But there is a part of us that will never fully tap into. It's unknowable, and it's the innermost hidden, because it's the innermost precious. And so even in deep wisdom secrets, there are some things that aren't appropriate for the general public because they can't handle that. And so Moses, when he brought the people out of Egypt, God warned him not to bring the mixed multitude of the Babylonians. And Moses was like, well, I don't want to leave them behind. They're people too, right? Don't they deserve a chance? And God was like, well, you'll see. And so that's how they took a lot of the deep secrets of Judaism and mysticism and repurposed those for their own selfish will. And so that became, there was so much intermingling that sometimes it corrupted the Israelites. Remember when Moses came down from Mount Sinai and they had erected the golden calf. And so that put a curse on the Israelites because they had broken the covenant that they would only worship one God. So the rose, if you recall, our first card Monday was the inner temple. And so the rose is that which we find within the inner temple, the mysteries. And when we tap into that unknowable and the desire that we have to seek and seek and seek, this is what our journey to the center of that rose. But at some point, we have to accept that some of the mysteries we'll never understand, and we have to surrender and let go and trust that unknowable. And that is where many people get tripped up, because they want to understand. They want to understand why. They want to understand how it works. They need that scientific explanation. They can't believe before they see. They need to see before they believe. And so that's where those people are left out. They can't access those inner realms because the doors won't open for them, because they cling to the sensual explanations, the material explanations, and they can only understand and latch on to that material truth. So it's harder for them to understand that intrinsic truth. But if you're here, you're more than likely the kind of person that has a heart and a soul and a mind that's seeking out and is ready to open to that inner mystery and willing to accept that sometimes there are some mysteries about life that we'll never know until maybe we die and we meet the Creator, and maybe we'll understand when we're one with that oneness again, when the veils have been removed and we understand fully and completely. So the vitriol card is about anger and frustration and rage. And sometimes our anger is needed and it's righteous and it's called for. And this is that warrior that stands up for the oppressed and the defenseless and stands up against the evil in the world. If we can't fight the evil, then we are impotent, right? And we're overly merciful, and it becomes a vice. Remember, when we've seen the tree of life, it's like the warrior and the merciful king are opposite one another, and they have to be maintaining balance, because if you have too much of the warrior, you have a tyrant and an authoritarianism and evil dictatorship, and you oppress the weak. But if you are overly merciful and too soft, then you run the risk of having the evil influence overpower you because you can't push back. So we need to be able to have every one of us has a little bit of a side that leans more in one of those directions, and it's our work to try to bring those into a state of balance and harmony and virtue rather than vice. When your virtues are out of balance, they become vices. And so we need to balance those. So you've got like righteous anger coming out in the world right now, and you also have misguided anger, like in the case of this guy who's on the far left, saying harsh things about Christ and God, and because he doesn't fully understand and can't accept the mysteries and can't separate and divide and discern what's what. But you also have the extreme right, who's so hateful and so tyrannical that they hate for hate's sake, and they're aggressive, and their aggression is being targeted at everyone who's not apparently exactly like them on their side and on their team. And so you even have confused people who are not part of the far right's team that think that they are, but they're clearly not. And they're going to be oppressed too. They're just pawns in the game. So there's a lot of raw emotion right now in the collective that's playing out in the world stage. And then you have, on a personal level, what we're processing recently through Pisces season and through these retrogrades, looking back on our life, looking at where we're at now, and feeling a dissatisfaction and feeling wondering like why it all went down the way it did. And if we have an open enough heart and a willingness to surrender to some of those mysteries that we'll never know for sure exactly why, then we can gain a lot of insight, and we can see how life has offered us opportunities to turn our lead into gold and to take a rough, raw mineral and put it under the pressure and conditions that would produce precious gems. Our experience, our wisdom, our discernment, our understanding, our compassion, our mercy. It's like when, for example, I have a nephew who has Down syndrome and autism. And when I think about the challenges that that little boy has been through, and his innocent little heart, and the strength that he's had to have, and to endure what he has, and the challenges that he's up against, and now the very real risk that he faces in the world. My heart breaks because I have direct experience watching him through his life so far, and the resilience that he has shown, and the lightness that he still has when he plays basketball on his team, and he has his stuffed animal Goofy on the court with him, and his dad holds his hand and he helps him make the basket. And it tears me apart when people use the word retarded to imply negative connotations and use that as an insult. And even when they say, oh, that person's a bunch of R words, and it still breaks my heart, because I'm like, I know he's going to get to an age someday that he's going to hear people say something like that and understand what it means and what they mean. And he's going to take it on as something about it, meaning that he's not valuable. And they don't understand that because they don't have that kind of angel in their life that they have watched and known and loved, and they don't understand. They're not evil people. They just think, oh, it's funny, or it's just easy to use to illustrate a point. So understanding comes from experience, and compassion comes from experience. And when we fight with our life, and we fight with what's happened and what's not fair, and we can't accept, we don't have to like it, we don't have to agree, but radical acceptance of things that we can't go back and change. But what we can do is try to turn that pile of shit into gold, into something that makes us stronger, kinder, more resilient, more compassionate, more sharing, more understanding of others. My best friend died suddenly in an accident several years ago, and there was a lot of mystery around what exactly happened. Was he hit by the car? Was he in the car? The driver was intoxicated. And for his family they were obsessed over the details. We have to find out what really happened. Somebody has to be punished. Like, we need to know for sure. And we need to know whether he was in that car or just hit by the car. And I remembered thinking, why does it matter? Because nothing that we do is going to bring Trace back. This is so final and non-negotiable. So what are we going to do? Ruin another person's life? Because that's not going to bring Trace back. And it's only going to create more pain. It's going to create more pain in our hearts. It's going to create heaviness and guilt for what we know we've done to try to destroy another person. And it's not going to bring Trace back. And so in that moment, that experience taught me radical acceptance. That I was able to navigate that loss with more grace because I had pain and I did have suffering, but I didn't hold on to that suffering because I didn't hold on to those questions. And that is one of those times where you understand that pain is unavoidable, but suffering sometimes is a choice or an inability to make a choice. So we see that we're dealing with this anger inside of us that can become very toxic, or it can be something that reveals deeper truths of life, which is this gold. The gold of the process, the gold where we start off in the dark here, but we find the light. We find the event horizon around that black hole where the light is radiating and all the light is trapped, right, in this distortion. So we turn our lead into gold by our choices, how we choose to understand life and how we choose to perceive life and how we choose to respond and show up and move forward through our experiences and through the conditions that we find ourselves in. And we do what we can to make change and make positive change and reveal the light of the Creator in the world. And there are some things that we can't know and we can't change. So underneath the golden rose, we have the Two of Swords, which is that indecision, that feeling of, I don't know what to think in this moment, and it can sometimes have us in analysis paralysis, feeling overwhelmed. At a certain point, the Two of Swords, it's like this stalemate of equal and opposing energies that just sort of keep us stuck. And so at a certain point, we have to come to a decision to move toward an end, move forward from our suffering, move forward from that inner conflict that keeps us frozen. Take an action, change your perspective, change your behavior, whatever it is. It's like we're tapping into that, and it's giving us a glimpse of a deeper understanding of the meaning and purpose of our life and what it's all been for and what it has all been leading us to. I've grown up with so many tragedies in my family and in my life, and crises that I've lived through, and chaos. And my family, we've always been surrounded by other people that just seem to have an easy time of it. And we've always clung to the belief that whatever we're going through has prepared us for something. And I remember in recent years just getting so tired and thinking like, my God, what am I being prepared for? That it's going to be even harder than this? Like, what do I have to look forward to? if I'm being prepared for something that's even greater than even heavier than what we've carried already, now I understand. If you just look at 2025 alone and the state of the world that we're in right now, I've been prepared for this time. And many of us have. And the people who didn't go through things and didn't glimpse greater insight and greater wisdom and greater understanding, they're the masses that are caught in the middle right now that are confused and don't know what to think. Those are the people that are falling for the lies and the illusions. Either that or they're so overwhelmed by it that they just want to turn a blind eye and not respond and pretend like nothing's happening. Oh, I can't watch the news. It's just too heavy. It's stressing me out. Like, you don't have to sit there and watch it, but to be aware of what's going on is very important. Like today I saw a story that a woman, this was in the last day or two, 24-year-old woman in Georgia was found unconscious and bleeding in her bathroom. She was taken to the hospital. Apparently she was suffering a miscarriage. And when she got to the hospital, this is a woman of color, by the way. When she got to the hospital, they arrested her and she's still in custody for not reporting her miscarriage and turning in the remains, like disposing of her own remains. Like, when a woman's having a miscarriage, they're basically like on the toilet, like doubled over in pain. Or like, I remember, so my sister like she runs science labs, and one of her labs that she used to run, this woman was an inspector for the state, and she was coming in to do a routine inspection of the science lab, and she had disappeared for a while. And they were like, where did this woman go? And apparently she was in a closet having a miscarriage. Like, this is what women have to go through. We have to just be at work, having a miscarriage, carrying on like we're fine, and there's no protocol, and there's no support, and there's no guidance or anything that tells us what to do in this case. What do you do? And so this woman, the 24-year-old woman, is having this miscarriage. She's at 19 weeks, so it's less than 5 months. So this would be a severely premature kind of thing. And she's still in the midst of this health crisis, and they arrested her. Meanwhile, there is no law that says what you have to do in the case of your miscarriage. There's hardly anything they'll medically do for you except for try to like stop the hemorrhaging, and help you deal with taking care of the rest of it. But now the laws are so fucked that basically women's lives are hanging in the balance here. And so instead of helping her, they took her to jail and they still have her in custody. And there's no law. She didn't break any laws. This is the sickest level of oppression. And it's funny too, because not funny, but it's strange how I've been teaching the Psalms in my shorts, and I didn't get to do mine today because I was running late for work. But I was looking in the book, and Psalm 1 is for women who fear an early delivery in a pregnancy or extreme severe confinement. This is exactly what happened to her. She prematurely delivered, had a miscarriage, had a stillborn child at a very premature point in her pregnancy, and then was imprisoned for it. God knows what we need. And every psalm that I have prayed so far feels like it's word for word commentary on the exact social circumstances that we are seeing play out right now. It's unbelievable. This is the same conditions that they were living in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, under the oppression of all the people that came that oppressed the people before. Underneath vitriol, anger, the venom, the rage, the bitterness, we have the Queen of Pentacles. The Queen of Pentacles looking back on her life, having become a competent woman of valor who is nurturing, grounded, capable, competent, intelligent, warm, nurturing. This is the Earth Mother, right? This is the divine feminine, the caretaker, the nurturer, the person who can run the home, do the job, do the work, take care of the family, make everyone feel loved, somehow can take care of herself, can take care of business. And so she's looking back on the experiences that have shaped her and given her this strength and this courage and this valor. Things that could have turned many people into bitter Karens and Kevins, right? And instead, this woman is standing there with her abundance of that virtue and treasure, looking back at how everything led up to this moment. And so when we're looking at these characters, we're not literally talking about men versus women or gender at all. We all have these aspects within us. We have divine feminine aspects within us. We have divine masculine aspects within us. And just like we were talking about before, we have to bring the extremes of the pendulum into harmony, into balance. Underneath gold, we have the Four of Cups. This is this feeling of pressure, ennui, angst for a breakthrough, for something to change, the feeling of depression, fighting a sense of despair and futility in these dark, dark times. The light will be revealed in the end. But we are waging spiritual warfare. We're in a battle right now, and we're in a battle for our own light, and we're in a battle for the greater light in the cosmos, on earth, for mankind, to save our humanity. But the end of this reading is hopeful and optimistic. We have the Nine of Cups. We have a solar eclipse at the end of this week. What day is it on? Saturday. Saturday at 3:58 p.m. Pacific time. So early in the morning. And normally, you're not to ritual or to manifest or to set intentions during the eclipses, but my plan is to unleash chaos and havoc by praying the Psalms like a motherfucker during this eclipse. And I will be praying the Psalms that are devoted to bringing the utter downfall and slaughter of your oppressors and blaspheming foes and people who have twisted God's message for their own greed, to propel and perpetuate their own aggression and violence and hate. And I suggest that you read and pray the Psalms as well. God's love will be revealed and God's power will be revealed. And those who are helpless and oppressed will be vindicated. And I'm not, I agree with I'm blanking right now, Mother Teresa, who never went to anti-war rallies. She would only go to peace rallies. Because the seed level of consciousness at an anti-war rally is more aggressive than the seed level of consciousness at a peace rally. And so while I am going to use wisdom and not fall prey to the bait of getting out and wreaking havoc and doing things of chaos and, demonstrations and things like that, because I think that that is what they want in order to bring down even a heavier hand. I will be praying and battling in the spirit. And I'm going to do that in a biblical way, in accordance with the law of Moses. And I think that that is the most powerful way to battle in this moment. Our prayers, especially the Psalms, are the arrows that we were given to fight these spiritual battles. And the other side, they're using prayer. And we've talked about the technology of prayer on this channel many times. And if we want to reveal light and goodness and love in this world, then we need to get to praying. And we need to be in unity. And even non-believers and pagan people are praying right now. And they're praying to Jesus. And they're praying to God, the utmost high, Hashem, the only God. So I'm feeling the heaviness today. I prayed the Psalm 1 that we talked about for this woman with great conviction all afternoon. When you do pray the Psalms, I think that it is good to pray them 7 times in repetition, because 7 is one of the meanings of the number 7 is divine intervention. And when you finish your prayer, you will finish it with this Aramaic phrase, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Vayed. That seals the prayer. You want to say that under your breath like a whisper, because it prevents that prayer from being intercepted by an evil spirit. And then you finish it with, in Christ's name, Amen. That makes it very powerful. That seals the prayer. So I'm going to end there. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day or a night or wherever you're seeing this. I know that that is a heavy story to take on. It has bothered me all day. And we live in heavy times and very serious times, and we can't ignore them. But tomorrow, we're going to have a lighter message. We're going to have our weekly romance message. Yay. So we're going to, look into our love lives and see if anything good's coming. All right, you all. Until then, peace be with you. Ciao.